Your daily good morning text has actually been a cry for reassurance.
Now, I know what you're thinking before you start saying everything you're doing is out of love and you are just being such an extremely loving person and you've got a big heart and you just love. Let's slow down for a second, right? Because I used to think the same thing. I used to come from a place of having an anxious attachment wound. And it was actually not until I watched this recent video made by one of my amazing coaches and friends and Dr. Zeb, who created this amazing story time about anxiously attached people and 3 things that they struggle with. I was able to plug in the pieces because this is exactly how I used to move before growing and healing into more of a secure attached style. Because oftentimes, believe it or not, your anxious attachment is actually running people out of your life because they don't feel they can breathe around you because of your willingness to cling out of fear of being abandoned that comes from so many different areas of your life that we have to be willing to unpack in order to heal through properly. But let me share with you 3 things that helped me identify when I was an anxious attached individual. Number 1, it was the struggle to relax. And even though I tried to convince myself a lot that I was at peace and that peace was in the relationship, truth be told, my mind was going crazy. I was never really able to actually rest and allow things to be what they were because I was so afraid that if I did, the relationship actually would not stand. Which actually leads me to the second point, which was actually the struggle to need to know why. Continue to cling to the thoughts that are coming to your mind that are coming from places of fear from previous abandonments and wounds that you've experienced. I must not be that person. She must not be interested in me, right? The delayed messaging or the delayed opportunities for us to hang out, the rescheduling. Now I'm starting to think I'm being rejected. You actually aren't interested in me. You don't really want what's happening here. Man, I wonder if there's a build a guy that she's actually after that makes more sense for her and I'm just kind of the placeholder. Like all these different assumptions that are really running through my mind that are all coming from this thing of the anxious attachment wound, which also led to the third thing was because those thoughts continued to show up, there was a lot of behaviors that I started leaning into that was actually me clinging and holding on really tightly due to the fear of letting go, thinking that once I did, they were going to leave. And for me, this stemmed from relationships I carried where I got ghosted. Your boy stopped pouring in and being the first to show up in certain relationships in the past. And because I recognized that when I stopped doing that, the relationship ended, I was afraid that that was going to repeat. So what was my natural instinct? It was to cling. It was to white knuckle. It was to hold on for dear life. And in reality, when we do that, just like clinging on to a balloon and squeezing it too tight, we can easily pop it, or i.e. ruin the relationship in general. Now, of course, when you think of a balloon, much like the analogy that Dr. Zev shares, you hold on tight enough to not let it go, but not too tight to where you squeeze it and it pops. One of the things that really helped me address this so sternly was actually being in a space of prayer and really journaling these things and processing my emotions in this space, to which I remember being asked in my time of prayer, what are you going to do when she leaves? I had to be honest that I wasn't going to feel okay in the moment because of all the things that I wanted this relationship to become. But then I ultimately came to a place through the help of obviously counsel, coaching, community, but of course, leaning on the text and on scripture that allowed me to remember that the greatest love doesn't come from her. The greatest love doesn't come from another human. It comes from Christ. And proof of that is what he did for us on the cross, what he did for me on the cross, just to personalize it. And it was actually 1 Corinthians 13 that opened my mind to see just how much my anxious attachment wound was actually leading me to a place of living out of alignment. Because you see, anxious attachment tells me to cling, but 1 Corinthians 13 starts out by saying love is patient and love is kind, which easily starts opening up your hand just a bit more. You see, anxious attachment has you worried and in fear of the worst thing that's to happen. But 1 Corinthians 13 is a scripture in its context, in its totality and depths, that tells us that the greatest love is what fills us up to not even give us room to live in fear and be paralyzed by it. And so oftentimes as I was looking at this text, rewriting it, journaling it every day, reciting and rehearsing it until I fully got to a place of just immersing in the love of God for myself, for who I am, for where he's taking me and all he's done for me, it was then I was actually able to start moving with more of an open hand instead of being so quick to cling and clinging to an outcome, clinging to a desire, that actually was pushing people out of my life and not welcoming them into my life. And so I really want you to just be in a space as you reflect on maybe where you fall in the midst of this entire conversation that we're sharing, that it is very possible that you are operating from your anxious attachment wounds that, if you're not careful, will lead you to squeezing people too tight to the point where they actually will want to walk away from you in order to breathe again. And it's from places of fear, previous abandonments, ghostings, all these different things that you've experienced that we actually have to revisit and address wholeheartedly in order to actually learn what it's like to let go and begin giving ourselves what we need and not looking for other people and external validation as resources to receive it, but learning how to give it to ourselves, and more importantly, relying on the love we're already filled with that no other human being could even come close to and at best possibly reflect, that actually allows us to move in an abundance of love, no longer needing them to give it back or be a certain way in order for us to give it, and at the same time be in a space of self-control and not clinging so tightly that we're causing other people to go crazy and pop. I hope this made sense. If it did, I want you to type "caught it" in the comment section below and follow for more as we continue navigating through our healing and doing relationships the right way. We start with doing healing work on ourselves first, which sometimes means being able to be honest and reflecting on certain attachment wounds that we've carried that might have actually played a bigger role in ruining relationships than we think, while also getting back on track to growing closer to places of security so we can get to be the best selves we can in a healthy manner, founded on the love and principles of Christ.